Welcome everyone to the showdown between the Greenskins, who shall be led by Azag atop Skullmuncha. Today, my friends, we face off against the proud DAWI, who shall be led by Belagar, the true king of Carrick 8 Peaks. Now, as far as my build goes, this is pretty much the build I use against gyrocopters and boxes and things like that. I'm not really sure how it's going to do against a more well-rounded dwarf build like this one, but nonetheless, it's been very effective against dwarf boxes as well as gyrocopter spam. And let's go ahead and take a look. Now, in the front line, of course, 3 black orcs. I would like to bring more, but of course, in accordance with the rules of the tournaments that I play in, you can only have 3 black orcs. And these guys are just super good against dwarves. 50 weapon strength, great AP values, pretty good combat stats to boot, especially with the DAWI. 110 armor, immune to psych. Not that it matters against the DAWI. I mean, the dwarves, what terror do they have? I think they can bring the ghostly ancestor characters with Clan Anger, which of course cause terror, but for the most part, yeah, there's not going to be any purpose to the immunity to psych. So 3 black orcs here. In the back, we do have some light DACA, so we have 2 error boys, which can do some okay damage against most dwarves. They have decent AP values for the cost, and on top of that, they're good against gyrocopters. They're good at shooting against slayers. I just really like to have some DACA on the battlefield. Now, this is how you deal with the boxes. You have Goblin Rock Clobbers, so we have 3 of them. They're just dirt cheap. Cannons can snipe them relatively effectively, but if they're going to be using cannons against your Goblin Rock Clobbers, you're already doing well for yourself. Basically, they're dirt cheap, they're small targets, and it's not really cost effective for the dwarves to shoot the Rock Clobbers, in my opinion. So having 3 of these bad boys, I think, is pretty safe against boxes. And if they go for like a Gotrek and Felix box, for example, they have like Ironbreakers and Gotrek and Felix and Gyrocopters, basically what you do is you just sit back, you bomb the box with the Goblin Rock Clobbers, and your Goblin Wolf Riders, Azag, and your other missile pieces just fend off the gyros, and you prosper. Now here in the flank, we do have a couple of groups of Goblin Wolf Rider Archers, and these guys are basically designed to just harass, but mainly to deal with gyrocopters. They're fast, they're furious, and you can use them to chase off routing units as well. 3 might be overkill, but I think it's worked out pretty well. 2 groups of Skulkers as well, 1 here and 1 here on the high ground to try and harass the back line and cause some problems. Azak up in the sky, and we do have 2 groups of the Night Goblin Squig Hoppers. I believe one of them is the Durkit Squigs, which unfortunately are being shot by the glorious gyrocopter with the Brimstone gun. Now for my opponent's main line, it's going to be Longbeards in the front line, Dwarf Warriors as well. Pretty good mix and match for sure. All okay against Greenskins. They will lose against Black Orcs, but really the Dwarves, in my opinion, in this matchup, you don't want to try and contest the infantry fight versus the Greenskins. Mainly you want to hold them in place and win with your other tools, like your missile pieces, your cannons, your thunders. That's really how you prosper. In the back, he's got a couple of groups of the proud DAWI Thunders, 2 groups of the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, just to have a little bit of extra punch against the Black Orcs. I usually do that as well. 2 groups of Althar Raiders. He does have some Slayers in the back and a cannon as well. So the cannon get to be keeping me honest and also putting perpetual pressure on top of Azak. So I love the build. Very, very good stuff here from Anticity. Clearly a very seasoned DAWI player. So let's get this show on the road, guys, and have some fun. So here, of course, gyrocopters taking pot shots at the Black Orcs. I have lost a fair amount. I mean, oh my god, look at the damage. That cannon did so much work. Just tearing into those poor Black Orcs. They're certainly not having a good time, but that's my fault for turning sideways. As a matter of fact, I was actually trying to run the Black Orcs up and behind this hill to get away from his gyrocopters, but man, he was able to get some huge value. And you can see the bounce power is already pretty dwarf favored. I don't think it's because of the cannon per se, but yeah, who knows. So this gyrocopter is coming in as well. Could be dropping some brimstone fire on my Black Orcs, I would imagine. The other group of Thunders here on the far side, though, is really getting monster mashed here by my 3 Goblin Rock Clobbers. So really able to pound those guys down. You can see the Dwarven gun line here starting to get softened up a little bit. Azag in the meantime putting some pressure here on the gyrocopter, but I can't chase too much. You can see I have to pull back simply because he does have guns back here. He has Rangers with great weapons, all sorts of spooky stuff. So basically, I'm looking for some ways to kind of interfere with his advance, use the goblins to kind of poke a little bit, use the squigs to poke in, just trying to keep his gun line from advancing on my Black Orcs, just buying as much time as I can. I might lose some units as a result, but for the most part, I think it's worth it to kind of halt his advance, and eventually I will send in the Black Orcs once I feel like everything is kind of opportune. Here on the far side, some of the Skulkers do go relatively undetected. Some of the Rangers with great opens are able to turn around and get some throwing axes on them, but throwing axes aren't going to be super effective here, so if I can chew some HP off these guys, I'll be quite happy. Even fighting Slayers, I'm quite happy with. So I do get a smoke bomb, and the Goblins are going to be surging into the Rangers. And Rangers aren't really armored, but the blasting charge is doing some friendly damage, but certainly more damage to me. So that one blasting charge from the Miners, really able to kind of nullify the aggressiveness here of my nasty Skulkers. And in retrospect, I maybe should have kept him back here, just use him as kind of a secondary unit, but I guess we got half HP off a group of Rangers, but I don't think it's worth it. Nasty Skulkers aren't super cheap. They're like 500 something, 525, so for the most part, I think Anticity certainly came out ahead on that trade. But as we have been interfering and harassing, you can see one group of the Dwarven gunline here in the back. The Thunders are pushed back by my Goblin Rock Lobbers, and now the Dwarves are advancing, so I'm going to be pulling in my Wolf Riders to try and screen out the gyrocopter. We're also going to be dropping, I believe, a Fate of Buna here on the Thunders, just trying to do a quick alpha strike, focus them down with Buna and a little bit of focus fire from the Goblins and my Daka line in the back, and we should be able to take him out pretty quickly, because if I can get rid of the gun line, Azag is going to have free range to do as he pleases. So the Longbeards were able to brace really quickly, so very well played of my opponent. I basically send in the Squigs, try and, catch them, unbrace, get some free damage, but I will be needing to pull back here in a moment because this is not good. My Squigs are being shot by a Gyrocopter, and also there's a bunch of angry Slayers charging in there, which is never a good sign for the Squigs. A little bit of a lapse in micro, though. I do leave them there a little bit too long. And in the back here, the Skulkers are being used to chase down the remnants of those gunline units. So far, so good in some respects. Granted, I have lost the Squig Hoppers here, which was very sloppy. That did not need to happen. We got some damage on the Gyros here, and the Wah has been popped, basically because now we're in combat here. Black Orcs, of course, taking these miners to Pound Town. And also, you can see these Dwarf Warriors right here are going to be getting attacked by the Squig Hoppers, and I should be able to take them out rather quickly. So now Black Orcs are going to be surging in, jumping on top of Belagar, which I probably should have maybe just stayed in combat. I mean, there's not really any Thunders left. I think the two groups that were functional are now offline because of the Rock Lobbers. And basically I've fallen back with my Wolf Riders and other units here trying to decide what to do with them next. So Squig Hoppers here able to chew up these Dwarves, and Belagar's taking a lot of damage. I mean, he's pretty tanky, of course most Dwarf Lords are, but Black Orcs have pretty good melee attack. Spirit Leech is coming down as well, and Azag is going to be coming back in just a moment, but nice little bombing run right there, able to get some value against the bunched up Black Orcs, and Azag though should be able to come in and do a lot of damage. And the Dragonback Slayers are now pressing into my back line, so this is kind of what I was talking about. I probably should have kept my Skulkers back here and used them as a reserve unit to now come forward and screen these guys as they advance. The backline harass was decent, I guess. We do, of course, have one group of the nasty Skulkers over here who are trying to get to that cannon, but Anticity does have some Slayers back here and should be able to kind of keep me away from those bad boys. Rock Lobbers are still shooting against the Rangers with great weapons, and I honestly think that the Rock Lobbers have probably paid for themselves by now, so we are able to juke out the Slayers, and we will be able to temporarily shut down the cannon. So a little bit of a tricky movement here from the Goblins will yield some pretty good results. In the mainline fighting, you can see the Black Orcs are being pushed back a little bit just by sheer numbers, and of course they were very beat up from the fire in the beginning. But they should be able to hold back like Dwarf Warriors and Miners, but these are Longbeards, so they're a little bit stronger. And here we have some Dwarf Warriors with great weapons who are now surging in, and I believe I may be going for an Alpha Strike soon here, trying to get all my Wolf Riders and maybe try and push those guys back. Azag was able to actually beat down Belagar, so Belagar did get forced back. The other Gyrocopter is going to be going down here, so some good picks for sure. Bounce power is pretty much the same as it was in the beginning of the game, so very, very even battle here at this point. Dwarfs, of course, though, are now going to be pressuring really hard. So I'm trying to pull my Rock Lobbers in a couple different directions, getting a little bit of crossfire here from the Daka, and I know at this point I have to bring Azag back to try and clean these guys up. And the Dragonback Slayers are going to be really scary. So what I do is I get my Goblin Rock Lobber crew and I start running. I basically just drop the equipment, I run away, and I'm trying to drag the Dragonback Slayers like across the map, get them away from my main army, because if they're like here fighting, it's going to be really bad. So in the meantime, Azag coming in, there are no Slayers nearby, and my missile play is starting to pay off here. We're able to do a ton of damage against the Dwarf Warriors here, and from here the Longbeards should probably be taking some pretty substantial damage from my Focus Fire, from these leftover Black Orcs, and also from the good AP values on Azag. Here we have the Black Orcs as well, who are fighting Longbeards and Miners, probably will be losing that fight. My Skulkers, unfortunately, all 68 of those little Goblins are being chased off by Slayers, and they were able to actually fend off some great weapons, or the Rangers with great weapons, and also do some really good damage against the cannon. In the back, I do have some Night Goblin Squig Hoppers who came back from routing, and they might be able to temporarily shut down this cannon. Granted, there are some guns here who might be able to peel those guys off. Very, very close game, but the DAWI are actually ahead on the bounce of power, and I must admit, during the course of this game, I was very surprised. I felt like his Lord was basically gone. You can see in the distance, Belagar is being chased down by a bunch of Durkit Squig Hoppers, and Azag's in relatively good shape, but again, the one thing I didn't really take into account was that there's a full health group of Dragonback Slayers here, which are really good against pretty much everything I have in my army. Granted, the Goblin Wolf Riders could probably kite them and do some really good work there, but it's still a very substantial threat. So here, of course, the Dwarf Warriors are shattered off. Morgrub's Mage and Marauders going to be putting some firepower into these Alt-Arch Raiders here. In the back, the Squigs are able to jump on over to the gunline units, and from here, we're going to be trying to jump into the cannon, but it looks like they did get caught by the Slayers here. And yeah, they're wavering. I mean, even if I ran away from them, the other Gyrocopter and these Rangers here would be able to butter the bread of those Squigs. And the fact that the cannon's still in line is really good for the Dwarves as well. It gives them steady pressure against Azag, against my other missile pieces that he can't necessarily catch, and it's certainly paying huge dues. So Azag's going to be landing right here, going for a glorious engagement here against these Longbeards, who are also being attacked by some leftover Black Orcs. And you can see the Longbeards are going to be probably breaking here in a moment. I mean, that's a lot of damage coming in. Granted, Longbeards have incredible leadership and usually take a lot to break. Like, you really have to punish them to take them down. A couple Wolf Riders here are going to be surging in. Mage and Marauders in combat, going to be trying to shut down the Alt-Arch Raiders. Of course, those guys can, put some hurt on my army. So they push forward, getting some nice missile play on the gyrocopters. And here they come charging into the Dwarf Rangers and should be able to finish them off, honestly, or at least break them. They're shaken, although, I don't know. Wolf Rider Archers aren't the best in combat, so maybe those Rangers will be able to survive, especially with the support of the gyrocopters coming in. And now, guys, the bounce of power is almost like point of no return. If we look, I have some Black Orcs, I have a Rock Lobber here, Rock Lobber crew here, Azag's in okay shape, I have some Wolf Rider Archers, but I was really surprised. I mean, I felt like I still had maybe a small chance because of Azag, but now that I look around the battlefield, there's a full health group of Slayers here. There's a full health group of Slayers back here, more or less. They're at like 70%, and I don't think Azag would have been able to carry this game. So very well played to my opponent. It was a really close game, honestly, and he did an outstanding job. The steady pressure, his gun line moving up, the advance pushing off my Rock Lobbers was really good. And that's kind of a testament to how truly good, builds like his can be, like well-rounded DAWI builds. A lot of people think you need to box or, rely on these characters like Thorgrim and Gotrek and Felix just to kind of, goon out games at the end and kind of cheese in a way. Granted, I wouldn't say it's cheesy per se, but, and there's other ways to play. And this was a really good example of a well-rounded dwarf build that had ample Slayers, it had a good gun line, it had a solid front line. And it was very well-rounded, and he played very well too. So big props to him. And I had pretty good success with this build. Again, if I had to it's very designed to deal with dwarves who don't want to move, but now that dwarves, of course, or not dwarves in general, but with players like him who are going to be taking a more aggressive approach, I think the build still has teeth. I think I need to play better with the Squig Hoppers, and I think I need to leave the Skulkers in the back and use them to help against the advancing dwarves. Basically, going in the back line and trying to halt his advance with those guys allowed him to get some free real estate on them. They basically just got massacred by Slayers and blasting charges, whereas had I kept them in the back line for the late game, they could have peeled off Dwarf Warriors and Longbeards and done really well. So I think that was a misplay. I think the build is still pretty good. But yeah, just a couple little play mistakes on my part. And of course, my opponent, the Great Anticity here, capitalized on very, very well. And it's always truly an honor to be defeated by the Dwarves, especially when they're led by the true king of Karakay Peaks, Belgar Ironhammer. So very well played to my opponent. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Greenskin versus Dwarf game. And on that note, guys, we will see you on the other side. Take care.